Hello everyone. Today I'll be discussing about array index out of bound exceptions in my exception playlist. So the first video was on null pointer exception and the second one being array index out of bound exception. So first let's Google about array index out of bound exception and see what it says about it. So we are in Java T point, and here it says that array index out of bound exception occurs when we are trying to access any item of an array at an index which is not present in the array. In other words, the index may be negative or exceeds the size of the array. So there are two things. Index may be first of all, index may be negative or exceeds the size of the array. So basically what happens is array index always starts with 0. So there is no question of negative indexes. And secondly, the size of the array may exceed, like say for example we have an array, say for example here we have 1 2 3 4 elements in the array, and we are trying to access, say for example here we put 5, so we are trying to access the fifth element. So that's why we make that is one of the case we get array index out of bound exception. So now let's go to the document which I have. So array index out of bound exception basically is a runtime exception, and it occurs when we try to access an element from an array and that element is not present there. At that position the system throws this exception. So basically, let's say we have an array of, like, arrays are basically memory allocations in the system, and say for example here we have an array of size 1 2 3 4 elements, and the indexes being 0 1 2 3 and 4. Okay, so if we call this, if we execute this line will return an array index out of bound exception. That is because at fourth index we don't have any memory allocated for this array. This is the meaning of array exceeding its length. Like the array length is, the index ends at 3, so the length will be 3 plus 1 4. So the array is of length 4, but it is trying to access the fifth element, which doesn't exist only. So we get a runtime, we get an array index out of bound exception. So let's go to the code and see some of the scenarios. Say for example we have an integer array with indexed as 0 1 2 3, and we have some elements over here. Now if I run this statement, this will return the length of the array. Basically length always starts with 1. So if I run this, then I'll get a length of this array. Length is basically a static. Okay, we are not able to. Okay, so basically length is something which returns the length of the array. And if I, this is an enhanced for loop, here we won't be getting that, because this loop it iterates over the size of the array only, not beyond that. So with this enhanced for loop, we won't be getting the array index out of bound exception error anytime. But if we iterate it using this, like there are, if we iterate it using the standard for loop, then we might get it. Basically if we do something like this, like when I is less than equals to array dot length, so which means that we are iterating up till the length, but in the scenario, in real world scenario, we usually don't do that. The length here is 5. Okay, let me write it down somewhere. So length of the array is 1 2 3 4, but we are iterating till 5, then we get exception, just like how we will get in the code right now. And also if we try to access the element based on the index directly, then also we will get the exception. So let's see the first case where we will get the exception at this point. So it's running right now. as you can see, the elements 23, 34. Okay, 4. Okay, so the length is printed, and that is 4. Then we have 23, 34, 23, 34, 65, 21 done, and then this is this part, and then we are coming to this iteration. Here we have 23, 34, 65, 21, and then it is saying that index 4 out of bounds for length 4. So if we have a length of if we have an array of length 4, then we should always iterate up till the less than the length, not less than equals to. Otherwise, if we do it less than equals to, then it will try to iterate iterate the next index as well, which is the length, and at that point it will cause an error. Now let me comment this out, and let me iterate this, run this first, or rather run this. So at this point, we are just directly accessing the element based on index number. So even in the warning, it says array index out of bound exception. So let's see what it returns. So it says array index out of bound exception, index find a 5 out of bounds for length 4. So the length of the array is 4, but we are accessing the 5th index. So it is saying that it's not possible because the element doesn't exist there only. Okay, so this is all about the array index out of bound exception. So in the next video, I'll come up with another exception. Thanks everyone.